Hi, everyone. It's Martha Novak, and this is a show called Real Talk with Martha Novak. I'm so glad to be with you today. We're going to talk about a whole new level of introvertism and extrovertism. I've lectured on this before, but I think it's really, or I've mentioned it before. I think I've done a show on it, but I haven't done a show on this specific thing. And I think it's really important for us to be together in this and to find out more about ourselves and know how to interact with our world in a deeper and more profound way. So that's why we're talking about what we're talking about today. I hope all of you all are doing well. We're in the throes of the last stages of, what do I want to say? It's not a move yet. It's getting ready for a move. And so things are a little wacky in our world, but everything's working out just fine, and we are very grateful. Oh, hello. Oh, I'm so glad to see you. I'm so glad that you're tuning in today. Thank you. Everybody is popping in. Those of you that are on Blog Talk Radio, you'll hear me talking to some people on Facebook Live. We are also on Facebook Live, Real Talk with Martha Novak, and people will occasionally comment, write in, send me lovely little signs, and I appreciate it all very much indeed. I'm basing today on an article that I don't like the title. It's 12 signs you may be an introverted extrovert and tips for how to thrive, because this is really not just about this. This is about extroverted introversion as well. So, but it is an article by Stephanie Catahan, Catahan, if you'd like to read it on the internet. Let's do a prayer, get us all on the same page. I always like to start out a show with that because I want to tune into what you need and certainly bypass agendas I have if yours precede mine. So let me get in that space for us and we'll launch ahead. Dear God, thank you so much for the opportunity to be together. You who are all we are, we ask now that we see clearly who we are on a deeper level of today with this information, with the information that comes to us intuitively and through experience. Let us be emotionally honest with ourselves and let us clearly know that we know nothing. And not react to that for 90 minutes. For it is the you through us that knows everything and gives us honest and true information that will make our lives easier and more effortless and simpler and more powerful in every way. So we're opening to this information that you have for us. And we thank you so much. And we say this prayer now with all gratitude in your name, in the name of the Ascended Masters, in the name of our love-centered guides and friends, and in the name of everybody listening to the show. We open now to the truth that lies in your enlightenment, which is within us. Thank you so much, dear God, and so it is. Amen. Okay. Oh, Becky, hello, good morning. And she says good morning to Martha and friends. Thank you so much, sweetheart. Yes, indeed, we're really all friends here. You know, I've noticed for years that, you know, I'll walk into a room and I'll just love somebody immediately. Hey, Scarlett, I'll just love somebody immediately. And it's so funny because I'll walk up to them and say, let's have lunch or dinner so I'll find out why I love you. Because I just, you know, immediately know someone who is in their conscious journey. It's really wonderful. I want to give you some general thoughts about introversion and extrovertism before we begin the actual information in this. I think that the thing that people miss about introvertism and extrovertism is that sometimes, number one, we can make anything an excuse. And sometimes we use the fact that we're introverts or extroverts, or what I am about to present to you, as excuses. Let me tell you, that's not what I'm presenting here. You have no excuses not to be wonderful, not to be authentic, and not to be yourself. Everybody has had various backgrounds. We've all come from functional and dysfunctional places in our families of origin. Even that is no excuse, guys. It's about finding our balance as aware, conscious, wise adults and going on to live lives that thrive. That's really what we have as opportunities here. You know, I often say to people who are resistant, and sometimes there are a lot of, pardon me, my nose runs in cold weather, and it's gotten very cold here. So you'll see me doing that from time to time. Sorry. We just can't use any kind of excuse from our past as an excuse. That's just not what we're supposed to do now. It's like, what are we going to do with the wisdom we have? How are we going to amplify our strengths and minimize our weaknesses in work and in everything else? Excuse me, I have a dog now that wants to say hello and sit with his mama. This is Toffel. Toffel is named, my husband's Austrian. He's named Kartoffel for the word for potato, because we have a cat named Schnitzel too, who often makes his appearance in these shows. And you eat schnitzel and potatoes together. So Toffel is his name. Okay, kids. I had a friend that's a mountaineer up here who was doing some work for us. And he's just adorable. I was crazy about this guy. And he heard this long explanation about why Toffel's name was Toffel. And he looked down at him and he said, "So I'm going to call you Tater." We just thought that was the greatest thing in the world. So that's his nickname too. So none of this can be an excuse. Nothing can be an excuse for you living dynamically and authentically. That's where you're headed. So don't make anything excuses. You know, I get really, really proud of people when they say to me, "I'm sitting here in my chair, I'm feeling a lot of resistance, but I can't think of anything to say to you that doesn't come from the ego child's mind." Isn't that a wonderful awareness all of a sudden? Because so many times we believe this propaganda from the ego child's mind. We believe, we have a good excuse, a good reason, hey, this is who we are. But it's a reflection of the false self, not the true self. The true self is dynamic. The true self is positive. The true self knows that they create their lives. By the way, there's a marvelous old book that I have recommended, gone around and recommended again to people, and I want to put this on the table for you. It's a wonderful old book called The Power of Your Subconscious Mind by Joseph Murphy. It's been around for 30 years maybe? Lots of editions of it. Get the most recent, please. On Amazon, you can find it for practically nothing. You'll probably want to get a hard copy because you're going to want to underline it and dog-ear it and, write in the margins, because it's a very powerful book. A very simple book. And that's the power of it. Okay. So that's the first thing I want you to remember. None of this can be used as an excuse for your living less than authentically and dynamically. It is information that helps us with our authenticity, you see? So that's number one. Number two is I want you to realize this is a little different way of thinking about what I'm about to present, but introvertism and extrovertism is a scale that goes from 0 to 10, 0 being a total introvert, 10 being a total extrovert. We're going to talk about the middle ranges today, okay? We're going to talk about the middle ranges, more of the middle ranges, because I think that the middle ranges are where we get confused. about what we need. Okay, speaking of which, this is Schnitzel. Hello, baby, but you can't be here because Toffel's in the chair. Okay, so we are walking by. Sorry about that. All right. But I want you to think of it as a scale. Your number might change throughout life the more awareness you have. The more aware of yourself you are and what you need and how to fulfill those needs yourself. Instead of, you see, I think this is a confusing subject sometimes because people who have attention-seeking behaviors, which are neuroses, and sometimes psychoses, but neuroses for the most part, are people with issues that we, by the way, all have until we don't. But that's not what we're talking about here, is it? Oh, you can be an introvert out of issues. You can be an extrovert out of issues. But I want to talk about the balanced introvertism and extrovertism, and maybe some of these middle ranges that are not so clear for you, so you know yourself better. Okay, so that's another way to look at this. Keep that in mind as we talk about this, because I'm going to give you characteristics, et cetera, the way this article is written. But we're really talking about more of the middle ranges. Okay. Third thing, people get confused because of their biases and their judgments on introvertism and extrovertism, especially if you had unliked family members in your family of origin that were clearly one or the other. I've known people that deny their own natures and work against their own natures because they didn't like their mother, or they didn't like their father, or they didn't like certain characteristics that were part of who knows what, their own issues. They came out as extrovertism and introvertism. If somebody needs attention-seeking behavior and is a narcissist and a real show-off, you may think you're an extrovert, or you may think of them as an extrovert, and you go, I don't want to be that. That's so false. Is it if that's someone's nature? Now, if you're reacting to it, it probably wasn't someone's nature, but you've got these things linked in your mind in some sort of confusing way. So that's one of the things we want to put on the table today. You may not like introverts. You know, I have a friend who is an extrovert. She's kind of an extroverted introvert. No, she's an introverted extrovert. And she tends to disparage introverts because part of her family was that. And she didn't like that part of the family. And she tends to misread her friends now because they are introverts. And she takes that as a lack of love for her, when that's just simply not true. So I want you to keep those three things in mind. We have to get beyond our biases and judgments about people, accept people as who they are, especially when they are living their authentic self. And the only way you can really recognize that is when you live yours. There's a resonance that happens that you'll be able to recognize. You see? Okay. So those are the things I wanted to put on the table first before we get around to all of this. I want to talk about this growing body of research that suggests that most of us are actually a combination of introvert and extrovert, creating a spectrum where the majority of us land somewhere in the middle of 0 to 10. Okay? Isn't that interesting? So we're going to talk about the introverted extrovert and the extroverted introvert, which is another way of saying, here you are in the middle of 0 to 10. Let's define more specifically what you are so you can be happier and live a more authentic life. Okay, now we're going to talk about both these people. The introverted extrovert is a type of what they call an ambivert. A-M-B-I-V-E-R-T. But it's grounded in the extroverted side of the spectrum, but combines the personality traits of both an extrovert and an introvert. So that means that you are maybe a 5, 6, 7, 8, 5, 6, 7 on the introverted side. Hi, Jay. Jay is asking, is there a middle road for extrovert and introvert? Jay, I think, Michelle, I just saw that. Oh, love is a splendid thing, Becky. Yeah, absolutely. Michelle, TOEFL is spelled Toffel, by the way. She asked what the spelling was, but it's really from a word called Kartoffel, which means potato in German, which is the language, of course, of Austria. Okay, Jay, to answer your question, why don't we go through this? And I think that middle road for an extrovert and introvert is going to be answered for you, okay? Because I think this is a really good article. The reason I pulled it is I think it clarifies things. You know, it says, here are the differences, here are the characteristics. Okay, so I'm going to just hold that in abeyance, and by the end of this, if I haven't answered that well, or you can make that question even more specific, I'll be glad to try to jump in there and do it. The reason I think this is a good topic to talk about is I am not an introverted extrovert. I'm kind of an extroverted introvert, but I've had to grow into that since marrying my husband because I was a real introvert before. So I've known that the healthiest relationships and the healthiest couples are the ones that have community around them. So as I've gotten older and as I've gotten a little wiser, I hope I have anyway, you know, you make an effort in a different direction, particularly since my husband's rather an introvert too. Somebody's got to do this, and I'm a little more comfortable with the extroverted introvert than my husband is. So there we are. Okay, let's dive in. So, to repeat, an introverted extrovert is a type of ambivert that's grounded in the extrovert side of the spectrum but combines personality traits of both an extrovert and introvert. Now, you can make the opposite true too. So if you are talking about an extroverted introvert, you're talking about somebody that is maybe a 3, 4, 5 on the scale that we're talking about, but closer to 0. Now, this is what we are at our core, that second word. And at my core, I'm truly an introvert. And what that means is I get energy from being alone. Not only do I get energy from being alone, I don't like music on. I don't like things playing in the background. I like to be quiet. I find renewal in stillness. I find renewal in low input activities, sometimes like reading. Sometimes I've been laughing for years about I need low input days from time to time. Low input days are where I don't even turn on the television or the radio. I don't interact. I don't answer the phone. Just on one day, I literally do something that is lower input, like reading. And if I have a low input day once in a while, I am renewed. It's like a week of vacation. Because really, so much information is coming to us from all sources. Look at our emails, look at our voicemails, look at everything that comes to us, not just our work environments, but everything, information. You can't do anything, honestly, in this world without finding out information these days, and it comes to you more quickly than we ever have before. Hello, Edward. Will you just come join this conversation? Hello, Edward. I don't know how to bring you on, so I hope you all are just finding your way because I don't know what to do, but I'm delighted that you're here. Okay. Let's keep going. So an introverted extrovert, let's go back to that, is someone who is energized by being around people, but can start to become depleted when around people for too long and will crave alone time to recharge, much like an introvert, but they don't need as much time, and they don't need it as dramatically as what I've just described, like low input days. Now, you keep in mind, if we're talking about an introverted extrovert, I have to keep saying that this is not issue related. I'm trying to talk about just the pure soul here without the issue, because you can have somebody who is an extrovert that's motivated by attention-seeking behavior. And they can really be more introverted, but they've got to have attention. I've known a lot of actors like that in my life. You know, I started out as an actor, and I was a teacher of actors for a really, really, really long time. Still am when somebody needs me. But here's the thing. Why are you doing it? Why do you act? Why do you have to act? Why do you want to act? That's my first question to people. Oh, I need the input from other people. I crave the attention. That's not a good enough reason, and you're never going to be a very good actor. Because a really good actor, it's about communicating. It's about bringing forth what you know about the world and sharing that. For people to reject, deny, or accept. To teach. To enjoy, to make them laugh. To entertain them for just a little while. All of those are really spiritual reasons. Okay, now listen, Schnitzel. There's no place for you to go here, okay? So you're just going to have to wait. If you see me putting my hand up like that, I'm fending off a cat who wants to be on camera. All right. Although personalities start in years 0, gestation, all the way. Now, you cannot come here. Sorry. They start at gestation all the way through the womb and all the way to 7 or 8 years old. You're pretty much cooked like a fine Christmas goose, issue-wise, pattern-wise, by then. There's a secondary patterning that occurs till about 12 years old. They kind of reinforce the first. And you've heard me lecture on that a lot. So I'm not going to go into that, but all my other shows a lot of times deal with this, right? You're still likely to have something that is your core develop then. Now, you may disguise it, as I said. Issues will say, I don't want to be like that person. I don't want to be like this person. And you may truly not know who you are. Here's the interesting thing about all of the personality tests, DISC, Myers-Briggs, my own LCS, learning communication sequence that I often teach to businesses. You're as accurate on those tests as you are authentic. And if you're not authentic, if you're not willing to be who you are, stripped naked emotionally, so that you really reveal yourself, all of these tests are about 45 to 55% accurate. I've seen this firsthand a million times over. And one of the things that I do in my work is try to go right for who you are authentically and get out all the misrepresentations of yourself that you even believe. We don't get anywhere by being false. We just don't. The end. And we certainly, I don't have any idea what the... Good morning, Edward. I'm so glad you're here with us, darling. I'm so glad you have made it on. I'm delighted. So, our environment and how we react and how we learn to relate as children often influence what we're talking about now, our extrovertism or introvertism, and our disguising what we really are. it's like if we didn't get what we needed as children, and many times we didn't because nobody knows what we need as kids. Parents aren't supposed to do that. The true natural evolvement of the personality and the personhood and the beinghood, if you will, coining a phrase, of you must be your knowledge of yourself. Know thyself over the Oracle of Delphi. Absolutely. We're supposed to find it out as we grow wiser. So here we go. Now let's talk about some of the signs of, and they start out with an introverted extrovert, okay? You host, then ghost. Isn't that interesting? You host, then ghost. So what that means is you are just charming and wonderful, and then you have to disappear. All right, well, I've got a lot to say about this. Let's go on and first talk about what Stephanie, the writer of this article, says. Introverted extroverts can focus all their extroverted energy at a party, at a work event, or social gathering to connect with other people, and then may need a rest to recharge. Now, I'm going to tell you, as an extroverted introvert, that I am now, I hope, I do this to a certain extent, but I need a much deeper level of rest to recharge. I really need it quiet around me. I really need the silence. So this is a lighter version that's sometimes what I experience. There is a woman called Cynthia Sayadot, I hope, or Sayadot. I'm not sure how you pronounce that. But she said that in her practice, introverted extroverts are friendly and solid conversationalists who seem to disappear when from the friend's radar from time to time. Now, okay. I have two friends I want to talk about. One of them does this to an extreme. She isolates and withdraws because she came from a very, 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 very hurtful family. There's an issue here with her that she kind of expects everybody to dislike her and to pick on her and to ridicule her and to humiliate her. If it doesn't happen, she's always afraid that it does, and before anything like that can happen, she withdraws, retreats. That's not what we're talking about here. That's an issue. Anything that's one of these extremes is an issue, and you've got to be very honest with yourself, my darlings, about why you're doing anything. See, it isn't the behavior that tells us anything. It's the motivation for what you're doing that tells us everything. And for that, you've got to be emotionally honest. You see? Okay. I want to tell you another story. Years ago, I had a marvelous friend. Her name was Susanna. Susanna lived out west, and I was just crazy about her. I met her when I was out west. We sat next to each other at a table, and we became fast friends, you know? And she'd come to visit me, and I introduced her all of my friends and locally, and she charmed them as much as she charmed me. But years ago, as a total introvert, and perhaps I was a closet extroverted introvert then, I just enjoyed the heck out of her, but I disappear. I disappear on all my friends. Now, I was very busy. I was touring and as an actor. I was writing. I was doing all the things that, some of which have developed into who I am now and what I do for a living. But there were just times I disappeared because I had to rest. I was giving too much externally. So one day she came to town, having pulled this on her many times, and we went to lunch in Midtown Atlanta. And I remember sitting there with her, and she, in her great wisdom, told me something that I want you all to understand too. It took me until I was, maybe in my late 20s to hear this, or 30s, but I'm hoping to tell you before, because this was so wise. It doesn't matter what you are, whether you're an introvert, an extrovert, an introverted extrovert, or an extroverted introvert. You have an obligation to people who love you. It's the wisest thing I'm going to say today. And that's what she told me. She says, when people love you, it shows that you don't accept their love when you do this. When you don't trust love, because love can transcend everything that you are. It can transcend your being exhausted. And you can learn that people can love you even when you say, darling, I'm calling you right now to reach out and say, I'm so tired I can't talk to you. But I want to be honest with you and say, I'm there, but I love you. And she said, if you had just said that to me, I would have understood. But you didn't trust love enough that you could say that to me. Wow. I realize that that kind of love that somebody has for you makes us obliged to people to tell them the truth and love them back, not with the full extent of our conversationalism and our dynamism and our this and our that. No. But it is to be authentic and honest with them and to reach out even when we're tired and to say what's true and get off the phone quickly because we don't have anything left to give, and then rest. I had no idea until that moment. And here's the interesting thing about this darling Susanna. Breaks my heart to think about this. She lived in Santa Fe. She had a terracotta floor on her floor. And within days of her sitting down with me and sharing that with me, within days, she was getting a snack, because we found those things, evidence in her house. She tripped with a plate and a little glass of wine in her hand, fell on her face, her nose went into her brain, and she died. There is nothing like a death within days of somebody telling you something that wise to go, I get it. I pass that on to you kids. You have an obligation to people. Get over seeming to, oh, they're not going to love me if I sound tired. They're not going to love me if I sound weak. You know, whatever you're doing in your head, that part is the issue. Because it doesn't matter what you are. It matters that you're real. It matters that you tell the truth. It matters that you reach out to those you love. It matters that you know who your friends are who will accept that. Now, there are people, do understand, there are people that don't have a clue. You need to be selective of friends and family. We're going to talk about that a little later on, because there are people that won't understand that. I'm not calling them back. Not until I feel better. But the dear friends that want the best for me and that I want the best for, you bet you need to tell them the truth, and you need to reach out for them. Don't disappear. There's no reason to disappear, even if you're tired. There's no reason. Sometimes you just have to love each other beyond how you feel. Okay? Number 2. Introverted extroverts like to be around people sometimes and be alone other times. And context can play a role in bringing out certain parts of the introverted extrovert. Call to spend introverted extrovert personality traits, she says. If you experience a challenging time in your life, you may be called to spend more time reflecting on your own. You better. And if everything's going your way and you feel like you're thriving, you may feel compelled to share this energy with others. Okay. Number 3, she said. Wait, what did she have? Oh, I've already said this. Number 3. She says, you may be a leader that shies away from the limelight. I don't like those phrases. Because as an extroverted introvert, and this is opposite from what she's talking about, I've learned as an actor, as a writer, as a public speaker, as somebody who does a radio show every Sunday morning, I can't shy away. Are you kidding? I have a work ethic that says, I got to do what I have to do. And then I can rest. Now, here's the thing I think that she's really saying here. I think that introverted extroverts, I think extroverted introverts, but particularly introverted extroverts, like to be team players. Unless there is some sort of narcissism, again, issues, or narcissistic tendencies, which you can have without being a narcissist completely. I think very much that you want to team play. I think so when attention is called to your good work, it's very easy for people in the middle realm to say, yes, but let's give credit where credit is due. I was able to do what I did only because of all these wonderful people. Well, that's the right thing to do, isn't it? I think this has to do more with being in the higher self energies than the ego child's mind attention-seeking energies. She actually says they may deflect and refocus attention to their team. I don't like the word deflect, because that implies there's an issue here. I'm not comfortable with receiving information and attention. And the fact is, I don't want any of us to be attention-seeking behaviors, and you heard me mention that in the past. It's not a good thing to have. But that you can receive attention without deflecting, I think is part of your balance. And that you can say, yes, I did my part, but here's everybody else that's done their part. I don't believe in self-deprecation. I believe in everybody being real and just telling the truth about what everybody's done. I think one of the higher self characteristics is that you're real about everything and everybody and all of our contributions. Nobody is here. Nobody's an island, you see? Okay. This can't be faked either. I guess I want to put that on the table. There are 3 kinds of narcissism we've talked about in the past. There is one of them, you've heard me lecture on this, so I'm just going to go to the one that's pertinent here. Closet narcissism is when somebody is a narcissist and has very strong narcissistic tendencies, but tries to hide it. Right? They look very humble. Oh, but everybody helped, when they really don't believe that. Now, that's not what I'm talking about. It's not closet narcissism. That's a falseness, guys. I'm not talking about being false here, right? All right. The next one, number 4, is she says you have meaningful conversations in person, but don't answer texts or emails in the same way. I say bull to that. That's an issue, okay? Introverted extroverts, she says, have conversations and deep conversations given to the friends and family, undivided attention, and when they're in the same room, it seems to matter, but are hard to reach over the phone. She says you'll enjoy someone's company over dinner, but need to recharge on your own after dinner, and you're disconnected from phones for a bit. Guys, I do believe the occasional low input day, but I don't like the way she said this because it really sounds so issue-based, and it also sounds so unaware of what we talked about the obligation to each other. I will tell you, in all honesty, and I am an extroverted introvert, not what she's talking about here. How this happens to me is when I'm out and I'm connecting with people, I so like them. I so appreciate them. I would love to know them better. I would love to hear their stories. There's always so much more to know. But I just don't have the time and the energy to do everything that I would like to do in that arena. I answer your texts and I answer your emails. I answer your phone calls. Hell, it's kind of important up here, I live so remotely, that emails and texts go missing a lot. Sometimes they never get off the plateau I live on. So if you don't hear from me, let me tell you, I'm probably not getting your message. So I tell everybody that I communicate with, and certainly my clients, good God, if you're writing me and you don't hear from me by the end of the day, I didn't get it, so send it again. Consequently, I like to hear from others that they have confirmed this too, that they've gotten mine. Number 5, I'm not sure I agree with this one either, but I think that what she's saying here has to do with issue. This is related to issues. She says, you love to help others, but have difficulty accepting help for yourself. Well, I happen to know an introverted extrovert, and this is true of them, but it's an issue. It's an issue. They like to believe, here's the interesting thing about this particular person. They're very dependent on others, but they like to present that they're very independent from everyone. It's a game. It's a ruse. It's not true. The truth is, she's scared of life and very dependent on everybody, and she's just pretending. Hello, Edward. Edward says, awesome points. At work and have to go, but we'll watch replay. Oh, honey, thank you. Okay, Edward. Well, that's why we have the replays there. Have a wonderful time at work, my dear. Okay? Nice day. Stay well and safe. And thank you for listening, all of you. I get so thrilled to talk with all of you, and I love that all of you chat with me, and it's so fun. Okay? Darlings, you can take your dependence and you can take your independence too far. You just can. And it's interesting because life has a way of teaching you. I can tell you about mine. My husband might still say I'm a little too independent-minded, but I am. I think that's kind of authentic for me. But I do want to tell you, I was more so at one time in my life. And right before, about 4 months before this darling husband, Michael, came into my life, for the second time, by the way, because he was a friend of mine 50 years ago, I broke my foot. I broke my foot. I broke it. I was reading and I was not paying attention as I walked up the stair, and I stepped on a stair in a weird way and I felt something snap, and sure enough, broke the little the bone that goes to the little toe in my foot. Excruciating pain. If I was going to avoid a pin in that foot, which I wanted to avoid, I wanted it to heal with my energy work as much as possible, I had to stay off of it. As the universe would have it, every place I went on crutches, every place I went, someone came up to me with a horror story about someone who had not done what the doctor said, instead completely off of it. And they had terrible repercussions from this. So I got it loudly and clearly. I couldn't even go anywhere without hearing that remark. Now, here's another remark. And this from a dear friend of mine who came over because I couldn't even stand up to change the cat boxes, the litter boxes. She came over every day and helped me with that. And at one point, she looked at me and she said, "You've got to stop this and let somebody do for you sometime. We need to feel needed when we love you." Somehow, that struck a chord with me that I had never had struck before. I never allowed it to be struck before. And here's what I realized. And I'll give you this from Martha's secret stash of things that have mattered to me. I realized that there were two kinds of needs. There's the ego child's mind need that is very needy and almost grasping, and it comes from the fact that we're not meeting our needs because they weren't met as a child. Nobody ever taught us how. And there is a kind of need on a higher level that is about, we all are in this together. And to have a really good and deep relationship with someone, we need to share this. We need people on a higher level because we love them and we need them in our lives, and consequently we have an obligation to them because they feel the same way about us. And it is this divine loop that we're creating here. And that need on that level is part of our loving each other. It's not a need that is, oh, we're not complete. Oh my God, I hate it when people say that. Complete me, please. Or I need someone to, oh, for God's sake, stop it. That's just dependence. Let's call it what it is. No. But there is a divine love of which need is a part. We need each other because that's the way it is. It's part of that kind of love. We'll cope if someone dies, if that need is taken away, if that person is gone from our lives. We cope. We will do it. But it's a way to love and say, man, they had such an impact on me. And that's part of loving, isn't it? Until we all leave this earth. It's a way of honoring that kind of love long after they move on. Okay. I'm just reading some of the things she says. Number 5 was, you love to help others and have difficulty accepting help for yourself. as I said, I'm not totally in agreement with that. I think she's mixing up some dependent and independent issues in this. It's not real clean, you know. So I want to put that on the table. She says this can look like offering help to those in need, but rejecting help from others. I think as you grow in your wisdom, that doesn't happen anymore. I think we all realize it's give and take. We may have an independent streak. Michael would call it my stubbornness. He's probably right about that. But I try to listen to the truth when I hear it. That requires me to change. I want to do it. No ego consideration there, saying, oh, I got to be right. Forget that. But if I have a different way of doing it than he does, and mine is just as valid as his, then I'm going to do it my way. There you go. Okay. Introverted extrovert. Sounds similar to extrovert introvert, but there are key differences. So let's talk about that. An introverted extrovert is a person who, at their baseline authenticity, I'm going to substitute that word, is sociable and gets some, and I'm adding this, and gets some energy from people. Number two, they experience the occasional need to recharge by themselves because that's what will help them, but it is more short term. Because an extroverted introvert, which is what I am these days, the baseline for people like me, and possibly you, is we're drawn to solo time, and I mean real solo time, because interaction with others depletes us, and the only thing that renews us is quiet, is alone time, is stillness, that's what recharges us. And number two, on occasion, we crave social interaction with others. The key is our internal experience as a core introvert or a core extrovert. And by the way, here's a really important note for you all. Nobody can recognize this in you but you. Isn't that something? This is rarely noticeable by others, which is all the more reason to connect more deeply with yourself. This is something that you're supposed to discover along the way. Wow. Now, whether you identify as an introverted extrovert or an extroverted introvert, you are by definition what they call an ambivert. A-M-B-I-V-E-R-T. The word ambivert contains the Latin prefix ambi, which means on both sides. So a person who's an ambivert can switch into their introvert or extrovert tendencies to navigate whatever situation they're in. Everybody's an ambivert to some degree. And this is why I say it doesn't really matter what you are, basically. The context will dictate what you must be, because we all are both to some extent. Now, guys, I've been reared in the theater. And in the theater, you learn, I don't care how you feel, the show's got to go on. So I've gone on with fever. Not, of course, in the time of COVID. This was long before that. I've gone on with bee stings, which I'm highly allergic to. I've gone on with a broken nose. looking like hell, I may add, but gone on still yet. Didn't miss a show. You go on. The same is true for whatever is going on the inside. There are times, kids, that I don't feel like being in a room full of 500 people. But you do this. Jay, you've asked a great question. Where did these labels come from? Why do we fall into labels? Well, I'm going to tell you that in just a second. This is interesting because the concept of introversion and extroversion was first introduced by Carl Jung, the psychologist of the psychoanalysis, psychologist, I guess I would say. He introduced it in the 1920s. He used them to refer to how people consistently respond to their environment. And at the time, he argued that the extroverted personality was the more favorable one, which has stuck around in our popular culture. It's bull, by the way, and I'm going to tell you about that in just a minute. But let's go back for a moment to the ambivert, okay? Because we're all ambiverts to some degree because we have to do both. This is not a world where we can be an introvert totally or an extrovert totally. We have to interact. We have to more or less degrees. We just have to. There are times that I don't feel like addressing a room full of people. But by gosh, the show must go on. I've got to. Okay? And so what I do, and here's another note to you from Martha's little playbook of life, and that is, if you find that you have to do something like that, do it to the absolute best of your ability and then reward yourself after. Reward yourself in some way. I'll take, say, if I've done something extraordinary like that, I'll just announce to my darling husband, who understands where I'm coming from because he's an introvert too, I got to take a low input day. I'm at that point. Well, I'm sure, by the way, guys, I'm going to have to do it after this big move. Okay? It's a big move we've got to take. It's coming up. You bet I'm going to need a day like that. As I said, a day like that of true indulgence in your introvertism, and who you are allows you such energy. It is such a renewal. I've never seen anything like it. So I'm going to reward myself that way, I'm sure, when all this is over. Because I'm going to have a lot of people helping and a lot of activity and a lot of organizing and a lot of sudden decisions I have to make on a constant basis. It's going to wear me out. Yeah. But here's the thing about ambiverts. Having the ability to tap into both sides is amazing because you have gifts in the introversion and the extroversion arenas. We can, though, make a mess of it if we don't know ourselves well, if we don't know how to care for ourselves and connect to our feelings in the moment and what we need right then, what is good for us right then in the moment. So if you are not mindful, if you are all over the place, if you don't know, if you're not connected to yourself and your needs right now, so you can honor that. If you don't have a balanced sensitivity to yourself. If you don't know that sometimes we have to do what we don't feel like doing and to reward yourself afterwards for this in the way that honors us deep down inside according to what we really need. It's going to be hard for you. It's going to deplete you more. This is how burnout happens, guys. Now, I'm only talking about myself here. The introvertism is who I really am, and therefore I need low input days. But let's say you're an extrovert and you get energy from people and you've just been through a lot of stress. All right, go out, give a party, have a party, do what you need to do, connect with your dear friends, talk about the situation. You know, I will never forget this. My mother was a real close friend of mine. She was a great mom. After all the things I've heard through the years about people and their families, I am really grateful for the family I had. But particularly, my mom was fabulous. And I never will forget a girlfriend of mine who was totally an extrovert. And back then, you remember, I was totally an introvert and still caught up in my introvertism, extreme introvertism, and giving myself my permission to indulge in that, right? Instead of being smarter. And so when I lost my mother, she could not understand, and I think she took it as a personal affront, that I didn't call and talk about my mom at all. I didn't want to do that. How I work out all of my feelings is internally. I don't talk about my feelings. I like to work through them. I like to evolve through them. I like to deepen, hopefully, in them. I like to feel them. I like to get through them. I like to see how they're influencing the present. I like to see how the past is influencing the present. I like to challenge that. I like to change patterns. I like to open to deeper and deeper levels of realness. She just could not understand that. And I think she said something at one point. I didn't take offense at all because I knew what was going on here and that she just didn't understand. But it was like, you know, she practically accused me of suppressing my feelings, which I was not doing. It's just they are very private to me. Now, if they're very private to you and you're not doing anything with them, I'd say you've got some stuckness going on there and some issues around these things. Because all of those things that I just mentioned, you're needing to get through. They need to be moving. Remember that our definition of God is that God is an infinite, never-expanding set of truths, always in motion. It's going to lead you to deeper and deeper and deeper revelations and truths. And by the way, opportunities and joys and peace and all the beneficence that you know is there in God. That's why it's so important to challenge issues that we have. You know? Okay, moving on. I told you I had a lot to say around this subject. Okay, I just launch off and go down bunny trails, don't I? Okay. So we just talked about where introvertism and extrovertism came from. And I want to talk about introvertism for a minute because Carl Jung, in the budding ideas of this, really was on the side of extrovertism. I think so much, honestly, I wrote some things down, so much is a bias, you know. We think of introverts as being reserved and quiet and to themselves and sometimes neurotic. And we think of extroverts as being loud and sociable and thrive on attention-seeking behaviors. Really? Throw those things out, kids. It's simply not true. But I do see clients of mine still with those prejudices and unable, because of those prejudices, to find out who they really are until they're willing to drop their pretenses. How we do this is really important. Our reactions to this information that I'm giving you today. I think there's really an important challenge here for you, and that is not to shy away from being any kind of introvert or extrovert, by the way. Here's an important note, because it was a 2017 paper published in the Journal of the History of the Behavioral Sciences that said personality traits do not measure your social capacities, and instead point to how a person needs to recharge and re-energize. That's it. Blows Carl Jung's original theory right out of the water. I'm going to say that again, guys. I want you to really get this. Personality traits do not measure your social capacities, and instead point to how a person needs to recharge and re-energize. That's what we're talking about here. If you're out enjoying yourself at your friend's birthday party surrounded by 100 people and then you start feeling drained, why would you feel guilty if that maybe just is what your normal is? You see? Okay. It's just a sign that your introvertism needs attention. Your body might be telling you it's time to go home and rest. Opposite is true. Number 2. We're talking about how to thrive with all this information, okay? Learn your responses to different environments. That means, for God's sake, don't keep yourself withdrawn and isolated. That means you got to find out where your thresholds are. You understand that? Got to find out. Some of us have really high thresholds. We can take a lot of stimulation. I remember, I am not one of those people, by the way. I don't like crowds, real crowds, unless, by the way, I'm speaking for them. I'm fine with that. I don't like being in crowds. You'll never see me down at Times Square at New Year's Eve. I don't even like Times Square, period. I like New York. Hey, don't write me. I love New York. I used to live there. But no, I just don't like big crowds. And certainly not this time of life in my sensitivities. I just don't like that. Learn your responses to different environments. The oscillation between introvert and extrovert energy can appear extreme to some people on the outside. I mean, just like my friend didn't understand me when my mom died. Why wasn't I talking about this? Well, then she must be suppressed. You see? It's important to stay aligned with your needs. What interferes with your knowing about your needs and what you really are at your core? Issues. Issues that are misrepresentations of you in the world that you might even believe. Who are you, really, deep down at your core? Immerse yourself in various settings, this advice is, and get really good at determining what brings you energy and why, and where your threshold is. Because I have a low threshold for that kind of thing, for crowds and a lot of energy and people around me, all right? I remember walking into, where was it? Phillips Arena. Somebody took me to a hockey game in Atlanta one time. Hated it before I ever got to the hockey game, because the outer room, I think after we gave our tickets, when we went into one room, there are televisions, big screen televisions all around, vendors all on the bottom level, crowded to the hilt, people wandering around before they went into the actual arena, buying food, talking, carrying on, watching the TVs. Oh, I almost lost my mind. That is not my environment. That's somebody else's environment. I was with somebody who was an extrovert. She loved it. Loves it. Had season tickets. It's like, I had to tell her, I said, thank you so much for bringing me. I'm so glad that I know what this experience is like. I never want to go back as long as I live. So you've got to immerse yourself in life and find out what your responses are and why, and honor that. Who are you on this level, you see? Are you being honest with your extroversion or introversion? Are you honoring? But I think, see, here's a thing that I'll put on the table. One of the first things we feel when we are not honoring ourselves on this level is anxiety. Anxiety is not a bad thing. Anxiety gets a bad rap because it's just there to tell you, look more deeply. You're not really on your true, honest, and authentic path. I think that's a marvelous thing that anxiety does for us. But what do? We try to get rid of the anxiety instead of looking to see what it's about. How are we not honoring ourselves? Michael, I can hear that, darling. Excuse me. And there's something downstairs that is being played there. Good. I'll turn down a little bit. I don't think anybody knows. We had some people in this morning that everything is heard, on a radio show at a small house. Okay. Are you recharged with silence? Are you recharged with other people? What are you at your nature? Getting to know how you respond to specific settings helps you learn about yourself on a deeper level, but only if you have the experiences. You see, this is not something you ought to test in theory alone. You need to get out there and immerse yourself with life and find out what your reactions are, what your responses are. Your reactions are usually based on issues. Your responses, your true responses, are based on nature, your real nature. Okay, number 3, you should find work, she says, that uses both skill sets as an introvert and as an extrovert. Big plus of being an introverted extrovert or an extroverted introvert is that you're able to relate to more people. Isn't that nice? Because of this, more of the world can be open to you. There was a psychologist, this is an organizational psychologist, Adam Grant, PhD. He said the benefits of being an ambivert is that you tap into both kinds of personalities. You are able to connect with more people. Granted, both kinds of personalities are there. And Grant studied salespeople who identified as ambiverts and found they naturally engage in a very flexible pattern of talking and listening, more so than people that are all the way on other spectrums. Ambiverts are likely to express sufficient assertiveness and enthusiasm to persuade and close a sale, but are more inclined to listen to customers' interest and less vulnerable to appearing too excited or overconfident. In other words, they're more real. They're sitting there listening and communicating. Isn't that nice? So finding work that utilizes your strengths benefits everyone. Okay? Work. I do want to say that everything we learn about ourselves on these and other shows are really important. I work for myself. I learned a long time ago, after working with a lot of other people, that I really liked being a consultant more than working in a company. I liked having my own company where I can come and go and where I can do things for myself when I need to do them. Now, I may wake up fully in my introverted mode, and I may be leading a group of people that I cannot be introverted for. But again, you write this down. I make sure I get a reward for doing it. I'm not buying myself a Porsche. Not that I'd have the money to buy a Porsche right now, but that doesn't even appeal to me. I don't want a Porsche. But I do small things for myself that help me get back to myself when I have done something that I don't necessarily feel like I need to do, or I want to do in that moment, you see? And it's not about other people. Do you understand that? I'm going to want to give whoever I'm talking to a good show because that's the work ethic. That's what I do. The show must go on. An audience of 10 is just as important to me as an audience of 5,000. Everybody deserves the best I can do. But that doesn't mean that when I get away from doing that job, that I don't take care of myself, because it's about me and my relationship with me. It's not about who I'm talking to. I care about and want to communicate with everybody. There are just times that I'm stronger to do that than others. Does that make sense? I hope so. I hope so. All right, number 2. Oh, or is this no, this is number 4. Be flexible with yourself. Now, she says these personality traits, introversion, extroversion, and everything in between of the extremes, change over time. They can. You can get more one way. You can soften your stance like I did. You want to avoid comparing yourself to others. And, by the way, former versions of yourself, like, by the way, I did. But in a way that locks you in. I have a client who has a talent for locking herself into what she was in the past. Nothing else exists. Just what she was as the child. What? She's the adult. People change. People have different characteristics, different responses to things. If I asked her to think about something for her to do for herself in 2 weeks, she will decide in that moment what she's going to do, and by God, she's going to do it even if she doesn't want to do it in 2 weeks. Everybody else, a healthy individual, decides what they want right there in the moment, even if it doesn't match what they decided 2 weeks ago. They see how they feel. She doesn't tune into that, you see. She doesn't see how she feels. She doesn't know how she wants to be in the moment. She's made a pre-decision based in the past, based in some sort of absolute template, because absolutes make her feel safe. Anything else than an absolute is out of control in her book. But is it? Absolutely not. If you are your higher self, if you are in that mind, nothing is ever out of control, because God is always in control, and you are letting that aspect of you through. So this is all propaganda from the ego child's mind. You're going to be out of control if you don't listen to the ego child's mind. Oh, that's bull. Okay. She goes on to say, you're a completely different person than you were last year, even 2 weeks ago. You're a completely different person, and you should be open to that new information and experience. Change is uncomfortable, she goes on to say, and recognizing that you're in change can bring up some resistance. So what's the answer to that? Well, stay in present. Connecting with yourself. Knowing how to reach your honest and true emotions that are, by the way, in deeper levels of you than the chaos itself. It's in the peace and the still voice that's in you, the peaceful and still voice. Who you are today can help you navigate through life, certainly, authentically. Or certainly more authentically, I'll say that. Number 5, practice communicating your needs. Practice knowing what they are. Practice knowing how to fulfill your needs instead of always looking to others. But also being honest. You see, sometimes, Michael, that is just, darling, too loud. We can hear it, love. Michael? Excuse me. Michael? Yeah, thank you. We can hear that too well. Thank you, sweetheart. I'm so sorry. Okay. Practice communicating your needs. Here's the thing. Not only sometimes do we not know our needs, we're unaware of what we need. And that is revealed to us in deeper levels of consciousness and on this conscious journey. That's part of our honoring ourselves in the moment and part of mindfulness to know what you need right now. But we also want to appear different. We are not embracing ourselves. We don't accept ourselves fully as who we are. Sometimes we are wearing a mask. We don't want to say, I'm calling, but I am so tired I'm not going to be able to make whole sentences, so I'm just telling you I love you, and I'll call you when I feel better. What's wrong with that? It's interesting because if I say, what's wrong with me doing that with you, you would say, well, nothing. But when I say, what's wrong with you doing that, you'll say, whoa. No, I don't want to do that. People want to understand. They expect me to be a certain way. Well, then, if they can't go with you into the reality of who you are, maybe you need better friends. Because you really need to be honest with people. What we're talking about right here, introvertism and extrovertism, are just traits that indicate how you need to recharge your energy. It's as significant and authentic to you as anything that is. It's part of your energy system. Being able to identify and communicate what you need to maintain your equilibrium will help you. It'll even help those around you understand you and find you dear. People who are introverted also need to be very much aware of protecting themselves from overstimulation and burnout. But you don't know where that line is until you're there. It's interesting. In fact, I have given this lecture to my class. I have a class of advanced people who are healers as well, some of whom are listed on my website, some of whom are not. And these people, I recommend having them do 6 people a day. You'll find out where your line is. It's after 4, by the way. Can't do more than 4 people at 2-hour sessions a day. You'll burn out. But it's important to burn out and then take 2 or 3 days to recover to see where that line is. You'll never not see it again. Number 6. Identify who of your friends, if they don't give you energy, who doesn't take energy from you. There are people that will tap you like a maple tree if they're needy. They don't carry the conversation well. They don't contribute a lot to the conversation. They don't have a whole lot of interesting things to add. They need you. So you feel like an old maple tree with all this sap drained out by the end of the conversation with them. Now, you may have some clients like that because sometimes people that are really immersed in the ego, child's mind energy are like that. But let me tell you, people that are more conscious are givers. And we all add to the conversation. That doesn't mean that we still don't need our private time, but you have people around you that are more like you because you attract what you are. and they're more compatible with your energy needs. In other words, if we all have agendas, okay? I have an agenda for you doing this radio show. Certainly, one of my agendas is I hope you feel better tomorrow, having heard all this, and I hope that you'll apply something. I hope your life will be better. Another thing is I hope you'll work with me and my team. Good, let's put it on the table, okay? I hope you will, because it's all here and quite dynamic for you. And there's no reason for anybody to suffer. We can get over all our suffering. It's optional, okay? But that's my agenda for you. You're compatible with that because you tune into the radio show. But if somebody has an agenda where they just want to take from you and you don't want that, it's the most draining thing in the world. So you've got to be very clear and identify very clearly who's a giver and who's a taker in your energy fields. I mean, who comes in and just drains you dry. I'd be very careful of those people. I have those people in my stable. That's just fine. In my client list, just fine. I'm supposed to help you get over that. Everybody starts there, by the way. It's nothing to be ashamed of. But nobody ends up there. That's what the fun thing is here. Some people deplete energy while others reinvigorate your energy. And this is true whether you're an extrovert or an introvert or anything in between. Loved ones come in all shapes and sizes with varying degrees of emotional safety. Just because you love them or they love you doesn't determine whether they have access to you or not. Do you understand? Put some walls up. I will never forget a woman who moved 3,000 miles away from her mother because her mother was so dictatorial and controlling. And she found that her mother demanded that she talk to her every day anyway. So she's still dictatorial and demanding, even though they were 3,000 miles apart. I suggested that she change that and tell her mother a small lie that that her work schedule had changed and she is only available 3 days a week or 2 days a week instead of every day. She said, I can't do that. I'd be lying to my mother. That's an absolute. And I said, okay, so let's tell her the truth. Mother, you're a controlling bitch. I've never liked being around you. I moved 3,000 miles away to get away from you. You're still bothering the living hell out of me. And I've got to curb this for my own sanity. Is that kinder? And she went, oh my God. And I said, well, it's the truth, isn't it? She said, yeah. I said, so tell her a little white lie.
90 seconds.
So tell her a little white lie. Okay? Okay. Nevertheless, the advice is be mindful of who you spend your energy with. Very important. And number 7, dears, you are the expert on you. Nobody else is. Since the core of you is based on your internal experience,
60.
You're the only one that can determine that. Okay? You are the only person who knows what's right for you. So you're going to need to get beyond these issues that bias you and prejudice you in some way or another and be who you are at your nature, at your true and loving nature. I love you very much. Be aware. Be open. Know your issues and biases and be beyond your issues and biases about you and find peace and balance. And that's my wish for you. Thank you so much. Yes, Scarlett says, enjoyed your show. Happy rebalancing and recharging. Thank you so much. Oh, Michelle, absolutely you can. Okay. Love you all very much. Have a great one. Okay. Stay well and safe out there. See you next week. Bye-bye.